Okay. All right, we are good to go. Good afternoon. Welcome to our Newsmaker series, hosted by the Center for Community and Ethnic Media here at the CUNY Graduate School of Journalism. I'm Errol Lewis, the Director of Urban Reporting here at the J School. I'm also the political anchor at New York One News. Joining me on today's panel are Greg McQueen of Manhattan Times, he's there on the end, and also Gail Smith, the Managing Director of Impacto Latino. The center's co-directors are here. Jahangir Khattak is going to be participating in the panel. He's distributing cards, and he'll be collecting your questions a little bit later. Our co-director, Karen Pinar, is in the rear. She's here as well. And thank you all for being here. Our Newsmaker series is an important part of what we do here at the J School. It's an on-the-record conversation between city leaders and our communities, our city's community and ethnic media, which are a bridge, of course, between mainstream society and immigrant communities and communities of color. This is one of many programs that's offered by CCEM, the Center for Community and Ethnic Media. The group also provides professional development, research, and overall leadership for this sector of the media. And you can find out more about the center online at ccem.journalism.cuny.edu. It's my pleasure to introduce today's newsmaker. Lorelei Salas is the commissioner of the New York City Department of Consumer Affairs. The commissioner is a labor law advocate who will lead the city's newly established Office of Labor Policy and Standards, which includes things that haven't traditionally been in the department, including paid sick leave, commuter benefits, future efforts to protect New York City workers. We'll be hearing about that as well. She has many years of enforcement and legal and advocacy experience, including as the Director of Legal Services at Catholic Migration Services, as a litigator at Make the Road New York, and as the Wage and Hour Administrator of the United States Department of Labor in the Obama administration. The commissioner has also worked at the New York State Attorney General's office in the Litigation and Labor Bureaus, and as a senior manager at the New York State Department of Labor, supervising worker protection divisions and leading strategic enforcement efforts. A whole lot of stuff. We thank her for joining us this afternoon, and here's the format of the discussion for this session. We're going to ask Commissioner Salas to spend about 5 minutes to make some opening remarks about one or more of the current initiatives in her office, and then Gail and Greg and I will ask some questions. While that is going on, Jahangir will be circulating and collecting index cards, and those will be where you can write your questions, and we're going to get some of those in as well. And at the conclusion of the event, the commissioner is going to step outside this room for any news organization that wants to do a quick follow-up or take photos, that sort of thing. The rest of us will remain here for a short meeting. And with all that said, let us begin. Commissioner, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Really pleased to be here today. Thank you, Errol, for the introduction, and to my panelists. Nice to see you again. So today has been a really busy day for us at DCA. We are today launching the new mission statement of the agency. For those of you who know what DCA does, we've for many years been doing a lot of work around consumer protection and licensing of businesses. In the last decade, we expanded to do work for on financial education for individuals and families. And just a couple of months ago, we launched this new office, the Office of Labor Policy and Standards. So our mission has evolved over the years, and the name of the agency doesn't quite capture everything, all the great stuff happening at DCA. So it's a big day for us because we have a new name tagline that we are given to the public and to our agency. What we do at DCA is we protect and enhance the daily economic lives of New Yorkers. And that, we believe, is a mission that my staff, my very dedicated staff at DCA truly believes in, and we're hoping that you will too. And so let me tell you a couple of things about DCA and the work that we're doing now. So as Errol mentioned, I have a long history of doing enforcement type of work for state and federal governments, and also experience doing nonprofit work. But I also have done quite a bit of work with businesses. So before even going to law school, I worked as like a labor monitor, working for employers who were had in place social responsibility programs. So these are employers who were looking to make sure that they themselves were in compliance, like almost like doing self-audits, right? And so I understand and have seen businesses succeed and thrive with standards that are even higher than the law requires. When I was at one of my last jobs at Make the Road New York, I also did a lot of work with small business owners. And what I saw is that we have a hugely rich and diverse workforce, and at the same time, we have a lot of immigrant entrepreneurs in our communities who often have brought with them the same business practices that in their countries were legal, were perfectly fine. But when you come to the city, you realize that you really don't often understand the law and you don't have the tools to comply. So the work that I did with small business owners made me realize that people really, truly want to know what they're supposed to be doing, and they just need the tools to do so. And at DCA, we're perfectly placed to do that. We are, if I can tell you in a nutshell what we do, picture your corner bodega in your neighborhood where you stop by to buy a cup of coffee or milk. That is a business that we license at DCA. As a consumer, you have rights. We enforce those rights. And as a worker, we now have municipal rights that you are entitled to and that we enforce. So we touch people's lives so directly in everyday kinds of ways that it is for me just an honor and a huge opportunity to be able to work with an agency that can have an impact in people's lives. So a couple of things that I can tell you about our work is that the administration has been truly committed to reducing fines, especially for small business owners. I believe the mayor's commitment was to reduce fines by 21%. DCA went further than that. We decreased fines by an additional $5 million. And it was small businesses that benefited the most from this change. One other thing that we've done with respect to paid sick leave, you may know that in 2014, employers in New York City are now required to give employees paid sick days if the business has 5 employees or more, and if it's less than that, at least give them the day even without pay. Well, we spent the first year after the law became enacted, we did a huge public awareness campaign. In subway ads, you probably have seen those ads on the subway. We did a lot of work with also community newspapers and ethnic media, and made sure, had 1,400 events, distributed 2 million pieces of literature. We made sure that employers and workers knew about this new law, and we've been enforcing it since probably the last couple of years. We've resolved about 800 cases, collected over $4 million, close to $4 million actually, mostly in restitution for workers. Some of that was fines. But what we've seen, and we're very pleased to see this, last week, I believe, there was a study that was published that showed that about 85% of the businesses have experienced no increase in their costs as a result of this law. So we're proud that we think we did a good job at educating businesses. We know there's more to be done. But this is part of the reason why I'm so excited to be here today with you guys. We want to do a community listening tour as one of the first things that we do in this new phase of the administration. I know that we've done excellent work thus far. My predecessors have really built a strong foundation. We want to build on that, and we want to start looking now and using a much more community or neighborhood-based approach to the policies that we are in charge of enforcing. So my intention is to be out there talking to people, to real people, and finding places where people are already gathering, right? Parent-teacher association meetings, senior centers, just to hear, really listen to what are their most urgent concerns for consumers, for workers, and for businesses. So that's a lot there. I could talk about DCA for a long time, but I don't think that's the point here. I'd love to hear from you guys. That's what I'm here to do today. So thank you.
Okay. Let's start with Gail.
Well, thank you very much, Commissioner, for joining us. Well, particularly as a Latina, I'm ultra proud to have you now heading the DCA. I think this is a great moment for all of us Latinas to see you there. So congratulations once again, and very proud.
Thank you.
It seems like as I hear you talking, my goodness, you're taking on a lot and you're expanding. So give us a little bit on your vision, because I mean that is an awful lot on your plate. Is there anything you'll minimize? You know, what is your strategy for how you're going to manage this humongous agency that's trying to do so much work, both for workers and consumers?
Yes, it is definitely a challenge, but one that I'm really looking forward to. We have people who have been doing this work for a long, long time. We have really talented people. And what I think that we need to focus on now is figuring out the synergies. I am sorry, I have like allergies today, and my voice is going away. Finding synergies among the different programs, right? So for us to really have a big impact, and with the resources that we have, like you can never have enough resources to do all the work that you need to do, is that we need to be smarter about it, right? So looking to be much more proactive. Like for instance, I can tell you that we know that we haven't been receiving a lot of complaints from certain neighborhoods in the city with respect to consumer protection issues. We want to focus on those areas. We need to be proactive about it. Yes, it's good to be responsive, but I think where we can have the biggest impact and make sure people understand that, consumers have rights and we're going to enforce them. We need to go out there where people maybe not even know what is it that they're supposed to be asking for when they, purchase a product in a business. So it's really about thinking about, for instance, the work that we do with our Office of Financial Empowerment and our Office of Labor Policy and Standards. We have a new division, yes, but the goal is really for us to work together. If we're looking at a neighborhood's financial health, the working conditions and to the extent that the businesses have the tools to comply with those new laws that we are, putting in place, matter. And so it's about putting our brains together in the agency and making sure that we're coming up with holistic approaches to the work.
Commissioner, thanks for joining us today. Your agency partnered with the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs on several ID NYC pop-up enrollment sites this year at smaller immigrant-friendly banks in the Bronx and northern Manhattan. What plans does DCA have to further promote the ID NYC card for immigrants to access banking services? And if you could also talk about how ID NYC plays a role in your DCA's financial empowerment centers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly. So it's not about just finding synergies in the work within the agency, right? But it's about making sure that as city agencies are working with each other. We need to start breaking those silos and making sure that we're combining our efforts and our resources. And so we're working closely with Moya. We will continue to work with them and trying to get other financial institutions to take the ID NYC card. We are definitely looking to dig in deeply a little more into the reasons why people may stay unbanked or underbanked. One of the things that we have been doing recently is looking, and you're familiar with this, taking a neighborhood approach to our financial empowerment work. And so, I took recently a tour in Harlem where we partnered with community members who basically walked us through the daily activities that they do in the neighborhood, right? And they showed us where the banks were, how far away they were from their homes. They told us about, we found a lot of check cashers placed and not enough banks in the neighborhood. But it was interesting for me to hear from the community members themselves the challenges and obstacles they saw to improving their financial health. One thing that I didn't know about, for instance, or I didn't think about until I heard it from one of them, was that often banks have certain minimum requirements for opening a bank account. That may work for many people, but not for me. I don't take home more than $150 a week. So thinking about that and really targeting the services to the community that we're supposed to be serving, I think is key. And so we will continue to work with Moya. We will continue to make sure that the ID NYC is a card that everyone has. I have it. I think it has great benefits.
So one of your the biggest challenges for DCA has been wage violations, in particular in the retail, security, and restaurant industries. Your role as a city agency has been delegated to advocacy, given that the state has the primary regulatory role. Do you foresee any changes in that role?
So I have worked for the state and federal Department of Labor, and I am very familiar with. We all know no one has enough resources to tackle these problems, right? And certainly the city can and should play a role, knowing that we have such huge workforce and such a immigrant, huge numbers of immigrants in our workforce. We should play a role to ensure that laws and policies in place are actually benefiting our workers. So yes, short of being able to enforce those laws, right? We cannot enforce minimum wage and overtime. We can, however, be the place where people come with their concerns, with their complaints. We can be the place that makes sure that while we can try and resolve your pay sick day complaint, we will make sure that this other agency looks at your complaint for unpaid wages. We will refer you there. We'll help keep track of your cases. We will help make the communications. I have a lot of relationships with those agencies. I know how things work. And sometimes the problem is just not knowing how things work. So that's what we can do. We can make sure that it's easy for them to understand what the process is. And hopefully, and today the mayor made a big announcement. We're looking at very, very near future legislation on scheduling practices. So there'll be more work for us.
Mayor de Blasio recently signed a bill to help protect home health aides and other paid care workers, and it will establish a division of paid care in your new Office of Labor Policy and Standards that will focus on developing policies to help these paid caregivers, and it's a field that employs many immigrants. Do you envision that office creating divisions to focus on other industries that tend to hire a lot of low-wage and immigrant workers, such as the car wash industry, food industry?
So if we had all the resources in the world, it would be fantastic. But so what I envision happening is the paid care industry is definitely one that needs special attention. We're talking about workers who are employed in homes, who don't have, who are much more vulnerable for that reason. They don't necessarily have access to, talking to coworkers about what their rights are. I think it's an industry that needs special attention. I think it'll help us build the model of work that we can do as a municipal agency enforcing these laws. Some things we'll be able to enforce, like I said, others maybe not. But we can think about other more creative ways of making sure that that all of their rights are being met. We can think about, mediation, working with other organizations. So we can be creative in a way to make sure that we're addressing the problem. So I think it's a good step to focus our efforts in that way. I think that we also can benefit from doing a lot of cross-training. So when we started with paid sick leave and commuter benefits law, we're cross-training that staff to make sure that everyone understands what they're supposed to be looking at when they are examining a workplace, because we do need to conserve resources. But I definitely see us focusing on low-wage industries.
A question here from one of our members here. What will DCA be doing with Airbnb, in particular the situation and the allegations that housing and fair housing rules, basic civil rights laws related to non-discriminatory practices are allegedly not being obeyed?
I won't pretend that DCA can solve all of the problems in the city, and it's housing is not really an issue that we focus on. We have an office, the New York City Commission on Human Rights, that looks at discrimination issues. We work closely with them whenever there are issues that concern both agencies. So I can't say, that right now I don't see a role for us with respect to Airbnb. I do know that as part of the gig economy, there are different models out there that we're not so sure what it means for our economy and our workers, and we're gonna be spending time researching and studying that problem.
I know part of the trickiness of Airbnb in particular, or services like it, they're a brand, so they're not the only one, is that it's somewhere, in some ways it resembles a home, and in some ways it resembles, a bed and breakfast or a hotel. Do bed and breakfast or hotels, does DCA have any regulatory hook into those businesses?
So I don't believe we license them. We don't license them right now, although we license a lot of different categories of businesses, so you never know, it could happen. We would, if there are workers who are employed in a true bed and breakfast or hotel, and our municipal laws cover them, we will enforce those laws. But it's a tricky issue to figure out, right? I don't know that, what the answer is on Airbnb.
Okay. A second question. Street vendors. There are many businesses where you have businesses that are operating in the streets near established businesses that complain bitterly about competition from less regulated or unregulated or violators of regulations. And that is one that you have control over, right, the street vendors?
So we license general vendors, and the vending laws can be a little bit tricky to understand. There are several different agencies that actually have oversight over different pieces of it, and I know it's frustrating. I've been out there, like in Flushing, walking around on Main Street, looking at the different vendors in the street. Some of them are right outside the business, and there's something called the stoop lines license stand that the business can legally have certain space to actually sell their own products or show their products, right? And then you have general vendors. We license them, but we don't necessarily enforce. If for some reason there's a violation of the licensing law, we're not the ones who actually do the enforcement. It's the police department. It's Department of Transportation who decides whether there's enough space between the vendor and the, in the sidewalk. So it's complicated. I have to say that we don't necessarily have a perfect solution for that. I do think and I believe that we can think as a community, how can we be supportive, obviously, of the businesses that have invested and have their own physical location, while at the same time, providing opportunities to vendors.
So are you saying that while you license general vendors, you don't have the right to revoke the license as an enforcement tool?
The license, yes. I mean, we don't have the right to actually, what's the word? Take the, confiscate the goods, right? And so we can revoke a license, but it's a process, right? And we're in this beautiful country where we have due process, right? And so we can issue a violation. We can then the vendor actually has a right to fight that, and it's not something that's automatic, right? So we will have to go through a process before we actually can get there.
So just to expand on that question, given the complexity of the execution, what tools are out there for business owners to understand, well, you issue the license, but if you need the enforcement, you have to call somebody else, or these are your remedies, or what is out there to help a business? Mm-hmm. What is out there to help a business?
So I'm not really sure that we have specific tools for the business to identify or map out, who actually has oversight over a specific vendor, right? And I think that that's something for us to think about. I know it is complicated. We've had meetings with council members in their districts. We've been out there where I myself asked, so do we license this, or which part do we? That part, it is messy. So I think that is one thing that we can think about, right? And definitely come up with something, some visual aid, graphic, something that makes it a little easier to understand, so businesses know who is legally vending across from them and who isn't, and then can like file complaints appropriately. And we will investigate, and we do go out and inspect.
And a final question on that. I know some of the advocates for street vendors have complained bitterly over the years that the number of general vending licenses is stuck or frozen, and that there are many, many more. There's a ridiculous waiting list. There's been created as almost a kind of a secondary market where people are being gouged or being charged quite a lot in order to get their hands on a license. Do you have any input into that conversation? Do you have an opinion about where that needs to go?
Well, I can tell you that the good news is that I think it's a wait list that is opening up for general vendors. And I don't know the exact time. Is it like in a month or so, something like that? I think in about a month. So the list will open up after, I don't know, a couple of decades or more. So I know people are anxious for that. We'll make sure people know that there's an opportunity to apply for this. We don't regulate the number of licenses that that's part of the city council process.
The DCA currently has, obviously a very heavy focus on protecting workers' rights. But what would you say to business owners that might be concerned that the agency is focusing too heavily on the worker and might not be as helpful to businesses right now?
So this is where I think the beauty of DCA is. Okay, we do have access to over 80,000 businesses that we license, and even more that we inspect. We understand the challenges. We know. We've been doing that work for a long time, right? I myself have gone out in the field, like I was saying earlier. I've gone to many, many businesses in Queens and Brooklyn, working with the inspectors themselves. I've seen the changes that we've made at the agency, the investment that we've made to make sure that businesses have the tools to comply easily with the law. We have like over 40 checklists that inspectors use when they go and inspect a business in, like, I don't even know how many languages, over 20 languages, I think. And those are the same checklists we give to the businesses, right? There's no gotcha game here. Here's what you need to do to be in compliance, and this is the same tool that inspectors will use to check on that, right? We have come up with a mapping, an enforcement mapping tool so that our enforcement is fair and equitable, and that we know that we're hitting the different boroughs in a fair way on a schedule that is basically required by our licensing authority. And we are open to discussing what other ways we can assist businesses. We want businesses to be in compliance. That's the goal. The goal is not to put out a law out there that people cannot comply with. If they cannot comply with it, if it's too complicated, we cannot enforce it either. We're all like working with the same tools.
Okay, so one of the probably most egregious problems out there for, in particular, Latino community is the predatory business practices of entities like payday loan or day loan practices. Do you have any specific plans to address that issue?
We are, a big part of the work at DCA is obviously consumer protection, and we do see a lot of high rate of complaints from, debt collectors, home improvement contractors, and we have a robust investigations team and legal affairs team. We have always been, actively advocated for, or I would say against, the kind of payday loan type of scheme. We know that that's not good for our communities, and we know that oftentimes that is sometimes the quickest way for people to access, cash when that is much needed to make ends meet. We are, in addition to prosecuting heavily people who violate the law, we are also trying to work hard on offering financial health education. We have over 20 centers across the city offering individual financial counseling to people with anything from building a budget, tackling debt, and even calling businesses that they owe money to, or for services, and helping them negotiate that. And if we identify predatory practices through our counseling, we will work closely with our attorneys in the office to prosecute those practices.
You spoke earlier about your work in East Harlem and looking at some of the factors contributing to the financial health of that neighborhood. And I know that the agency is looking at Bedford-Stuyvesant right now as well. Can you talk about when the agency will release findings on this work that you're doing, and what neighborhoods you might pinpoint next?
So I know we're still in the kind of early stages of the study. We've done some focus groups already, and we've done the walkthroughs. We have been working on developing indicators. So how are we going to actually measure financial health in those neighborhoods, right? And we are putting together a pilot program in those two neighborhoods to test out the indicators. I actually don't have a very good sense of the timeline on that yet, but I can definitely have you talk to our OFE people on staff who will be able to give you much more detailed information on that.
Okay. What is the best way for the folks here to get information from your agency? Who handles media inquiries? What's the best way to reach that person?
So they're both here today. So Abby Lutens is our communications person, and Meet Baga, he's the External Affairs Deputy Commissioner. I know that we have recently been setting up meetings with many of you, and if you haven't met with us, make sure that you talk to Abby, because we'd love to talk with you. We want to make sure that we are actually, addressing the people who you serve, and you can be helpful to us in us developing our listening tour and like policies and practices that really address the needs of your communities.
And of course, the follow-up is that this organization did a study on the percentage of official advertising done with community media outlets, and found that they get nowhere near the level of advertising that their size of these specialized audiences deserves. And the mayor's office has said that they plan to do better and so forth. Do you know how much advertising your office does, and will you make sure an adequate percentage is devoted to community media?
So I have to admit that in the last 3 months since I've been with DCA, I don't know yet all the details. I know that generally we try to spend about a quarter of the budget for public campaigns on ethnic media. It may not be a whole lot of money, but a quarter is a lot from our budget, because a lot of it actually goes to pay for subway type of advertising, so it's a good chunk of that. But obviously, you can feel free to talk to Abby, can give you more information on this, and we are committed. We want to work with you. I want to make sure that your readership learns about DCA. I want to introduce DCA to you.
A question from the audience. The awareness drive for small businesses that DCA has done, what has been the response? What are small businesses telling you?
I've been in the field, right, with the inspectors. I walked into hundreds of businesses myself, and what I see is that I was surprised to see, actually, that people were not unhappy to see us. The reception was fine. I actually saw a high rate of compliance, and most of the businesses we walked into, and it was totally surprise visits, they had no issues. They had all their prices listed, they had all their signs posted, and they simply said, yes, you want to take a look? I'll show you. And we've done a lot of business education where we just go out there and look at what is it that the business needs to do without issuing any single violation. So the reception, I think, is great, and I'm really happy to see that. I want businesses to see us as partners in helping them be in compliance.
Okay, so you have the new Office of Labor Policy and Standards that has been incorporated into DCA. The charge of that new office is pretty substantial on its own. Are you closer to naming a director, and how does this new office impact the already extensive scope of your agency?
So yes, we did hire a deputy commissioner for the Office of Labor Policy and Standards. She started, I want to say, about a month ago, and she has been very busy since day one. Um, she brings with her great background on labor issues and has just very quickly started looking into the things that the agency has been doing well, that office in particular, and where the needs are. We are actually in the process of staffing up a little bit. You know, we have new mandates, and we're looking to add additional staff. But the existing staff that has been doing work around paid sick leave and commuter benefits. So we are trying to make sure that we are cross-training people so that we are smart with the use of our resources. And at the same time, that we want to make sure that we get good input from both workers' advocates, but also businesses. And we want to make sure our policies are informed by our expertise with dealing with businesses.
Since you're relatively new to the commissioner role, you assumed the role in May. Could you talk about how the transition has gone and perhaps point out something that surprised you the most about working at the agency?
So I actually, I spent about 10 years in government work, my earlier career, both at the state and federal levels. So coming back to work for government is, you know, it didn't feel like a huge lift. It's super exciting to be part of New York City government. I love New York. It's my heart and soul. It's just, you know, I feel very honored with that. One thing that surprised me has been a really warm reception from my staff. I think that they are just like people have really believe in the mission of the agency and with their hearts. And I've been in other places where it took a long time for people to start thinking about change can be okay. No one likes change. Everyone feels uncomfortable with it. But people here have embraced change in a way that is surprising.
Let's talk about, so under Commissioner Menon, the DCA grew its staff considerably. Do you have plans to increase? You sort of mentioned that, but you've taken on a lot of new scope. Do you plan to increase your staff substantially?
We believe we are close to 450 or so staff members. The new Office of Labor Policy and Standards does require additional staffing. We have new laws to enforce. But I think the idea for us is that we want to, again, do more with less. That's our task. And if we are smart about being more proactive, about investigating violations, if we are strategic about the use of our resources, I think we can, we can do good work without having to increase like tons of people in the agency, right?
There's a question here. How is your office following up the increase in auto loans and some of the practices related to this type of credit?
So that is definitely an industry we're looking at. We have quite a few complaints from secondhand auto dealers. We're looking into deceptive practices, predatory practices, especially in some of the immigrant communities. We're concerned about that. We are working on it, and we will prosecute aggressively those businesses that are deceiving and getting people into loans that they should not have been getting into to begin with.
Does that jurisdiction end at the city's borders? Because I know a lot of auto supply chains, it's actually being steered or the financing is coming from outside of New York City.
That's a really good question. I'm not 100% sure if it is, if you're a city resident and the law applies to you, if you purchase, if the business is outside the city. Definitely the businesses that are in the city are covered by us.
So we talked about the expansion of the scope of the agency. Is there anything you would plan to ratchet down within what's now within the scope of DCA right now? Is there anything you say that you're thinking maybe it doesn't belong in my agency?
No. Everything belongs there. Everything that is there right now belongs there. And I think because we are again touching so like all the different stakeholders, right? We're touching the workers, the consumers, and the businesses. I think that is what makes us well placed to really come up with policies that are taking their input into account, everyone's input into account. So no, I think that we will continue to do the same work that we're doing.
Could you talk about some of the specific assistance that DCA provides to small or immigrant-owned businesses or nonprofits in order to comply with the paid sick leave law and also the new law for commuter benefits?
So I know that we have materials, educational materials, in I think close to 20-something languages or more. We have done a lot of work, an outreach campaign, actually partnering with a lot of community-based organizations that are, in the communities, right? So we know that there are organizations out there that know the communities better than we do. So the idea is that we partner with them, and we've done so. I believe that on the first day of action that we had for paid sick days, we had like several organizations working with us, their members, the people that go to them, distributing materials to workers and employers, and we plan to continue to do that. And with respect to business owners, immigrant business owners, we have some tools already in place. We again translate our materials into many, many languages. We have a language line for those languages that we don't have, materials into. But we want to know, if there's a different way in which we can serve them. I know from my own experience that we need to go to these businesses. It's harder for them to take the time to come to us, right? One thing that we've done recently is that we opened up this licensing center in Queens. It's in an effort to be more responsive to small business services, to their needs. If you go to our licensing center in Queens, you can apply for DOH, Department of Health license, or a DCA license, and you have access to staff from small business services who can help you think about your business needs. So we're making an effort, but happy to hear from you guys as to other ideas that we're not thinking about.
Here's one from the audience. Many new immigrants, especially elderly ones, don't get even the minimum wage that the city has been talking about. What steps will your agency take to implement the higher minimum wage that's been announced?
So the minimum wage is a state law, right? It definitely impacts the city and its workers. And as we were saying earlier, we don't have direct enforcement power to make sure that that's done. But we do have the ability to educate people. We recently actually had a law passed that requires us to target a lot of our work, our education campaigns, to seniors, immigrants, and women. And so we are hoping to come up with ideas to really drive our outreach to these populations, and seniors is going to be one of them. Through the paid care work, I know that we have a lot of domestic workers and home health care aides who are employed in that industry, so we're going to be touching them directly.
So going back to the reaching small businesses, do you have any plans to partner with private sector organizations to help you, with your task, maybe chambers of commerce or
Definitely.
institutions that could possibly help leverage that they already bring in groups of small businesses?
Definitely. We've been meeting. The DCA has long-standing relationships with industry associations, and we will continue to do that. But we also work closely with the small business services, and they themselves have a lot of access, obviously, to these businesses. And we want to hear from them, right? The idea is that we need to think about ways to make it easier for people to know what they are supposed to be complying with. So we're partnering with them, and we're, again, I think I'm repeating myself all the time with this, but we want to make sure that the laws that we have in place, people feel like they have the tools to comply with them.
Are there any other projects that you see on the horizon for the new Office of Labor Policy and Standards to tackle?
I think we definitely want to do more research as to other low-wage industries, like the paid care industry. As you know, I referred to the earlier announcement from the mayor. We are looking into scheduling practices. We'll be working on a legislation to make sure that all workers in the fast food industry have access to their schedules at least 2 weeks in advance. But we are also open to thinking about what other industries are doing and what is the best way to come up with a solution so that everyone can have more predictability in their lives. People can plan to go to work, to go to school, for childcare. So some of the work in this office is going to be about doing research and making policy recommendations to the city.
Here's another question. Does DCA participate in the New York City Amnesty Program? That's the program to get, I guess, people with longstanding, or businesses in particular, with long-time outstanding fines to come in and pay without risk of losing their license and so forth.
I don't believe we do. I'm actually not that familiar with that program, but we don't, right?
And to the extent, on the question of fines, to the extent that you mentioned that the city set a goal of reducing fines, is the idea, well, how is that not sort of lightening up on enforcement? I mean, why is that a goal?
So the types of fines that for which we are no longer assessing as many fines as we used to do before are fines, regulations that require certain signs to be posted, right? There are things that we believe are better addressed with a cure period. So to give the employer the chance to actually, the business, the chance to actually comply. You don't have the sign. Okay, here's a copy of the sign that you need to post, and as long as you put it out there within the next 3 months, I think, 90 days, it's fine. We won't issue a violation. But to the extent that a consumer's health is at risk, we will continue to enforce those laws. So, for instance, the sale of tobacco to minors, we need to enforce that. So it's not about not enforcing the law. It's about enforcing the right things, the things that are actually can put people in danger.
Is the revenue generated by those fines, is it connected to the agency's budget in any way? Is it a number that you personally keep an eye on?
Not at all. Not at all. It's not connected. I have no idea actually the Office of Management Budget will keep track of that, but we will probably have to start laying people off if that was the case. So no, it's not connected.
The scope of the agency sometimes may have some conflicting work. If you're taking care of employees or employers, businesses, but they may be doing predatory work against consumers. How do you manage that, and what is your priority?
So the way we want to think about the work at DCA is that, what kind of community are we building, right? And how can DCA play a role in helping build thriving communities? So if a business owner says to me, if I pay a sick day to my employee, I am going to lose money. It's going to hurt my business. And now we know the studies don't show that, but the truth is, like, that small business owner has a daughter or a son or an aunt or an uncle who works for another place. And if you think about that, if you think beyond your own, existence, but about your neighbors, the people around you, your family, the people you love, you think that these are good policies that should be in place. And you never know what life has in store for you. Today you have a business, tomorrow you may be working for an employer. And won't you want then to have a paid sick day? So I think it's about us having a conversation about it and really having difficult conversations at times and saying, let's have policies in place that are going to benefit everyone, right? And again, my experience has been that businesses are often have better standards than the law requires, and I see them thrive and succeed. So it's possible.
When you talk about a phrase you've used a couple of times this afternoon, Commissioner, is that you want to help small businesses develop the tools to remain in compliance with the laws. But these are also businesses that the agency has licensed in the first place. So shouldn't those tools maybe be baked into the process of whether or not they get the license? And can you be specific when you say the tools that would enable them to comply?
So that's a great idea. I mean, it is. I think that we should. The job that we have now is like connecting the different pieces of work that we're doing at the agency, right? And there's definitely a way in which, like, we're licensing you. Here's all the information you need, because these are the other things that we look at DCA. But what I mean by tools is also that take paid sick leave. We came up with a spreadsheet that we give to employers, so it's easier for them to be able to figure out, and the accrual system for employees accumulating time for paid sick days, right? So it's, to the extent that we can, we will continue to do that. We will make things easier for people to not have an excuse to say, oh, I can't, I need to hire someone else to do this work for me. We'll try to do it as low cost as possible, and if it's possible to do it for free, we'll provide it.
That in particular, paid sick leave, have private sector players like ADP or Paychex, have they sort of stepped up? I know that when you want to hire a babysitter, you want to hire a nanny, you want to hire certain kinds of workers, and you want to run it through some sort of quasi-payroll system, there are private sector solutions that are out there.
So I'm not really too familiar with the DCA's relationship with ADP or Paychex, those payroll systems, in terms of that, right? I know that there have been conversations about the commuter benefits law, mostly to educate them and to see their interests. But I know that from my past experience working for the Department of Labor, that they didn't always know that, maybe they know about overtime. After 40 hours, you're supposed to pay overtime. But they don't necessarily know all the intricacies of the law. And so you cannot just rely on them to know it all, to be able to keep you in compliance. So it's still your responsibility as the business owner to inform yourself and educate yourself. And that's where I think we need to keep playing a key role in making sure that the information is accessible to people so that they can go back and tell ADP or Paychex, you know what, actually you need to include this other column or line or whatever it is that they need to do.
And I would have thought they would have come to sit down with you or whatever state agency, because once the law is passed, you would anticipate that, anybody with more than 20 employees or whatever the cutoff is going to at least potentially be a customer, that there might be some, profit motive that would lead them to try and figure this stuff out. The city-created spreadsheet that you're talking about that you say you've given to small businesses, does that how will that fold into sort of enforcement? Like if somebody says, look, I took the spreadsheet you gave me, I plugged in the numbers as best I could, I seem to be out of compliance now, you certainly should share some of the problems or even indeed the liability for it, right?
So this is a municipal law, right? And obviously if we're putting a product out, we have to take responsibility and be accountable for the product that we put out. And sometimes that's what happens. Government doesn't put out things too much because they're worried about liability, and we don't want to take the risk. But that also makes us less friendly, less accessible, right? So I think to the extent that we can, we will continue to offer these tools in a careful way. And obviously, if we make a mistake in the spreadsheets, I think we're going to have to figure it out, and it's not really the business's fault in that case.
Yeah. Just got a question in our last few minutes. Wanting more details from your perspective about the forgiving fines program, I guess the amnesty program that we started talking about.
Sure. I mean, I think like I said earlier, the administration is committed to fine reduction. I've seen it. I've seen it not just in the numbers, but I've seen it in the reaction that we get when our inspectors are out there visiting the businesses. We're not going to sacrifice consumers' health or safety, but to the extent that we can, we will continue to give businesses a chance to come into compliance for things that, we think should not be a problem, right? That's all I can say about that. We use our mapping tool also to make sure that we are visiting businesses with the regularity that we're supposed to, and that we're not targeting only one neighborhood, so that we're seen as fair and accessible. And I am open to hearing about other ideas that small business owners have.
Are the enforcement mechanisms of the agency, are they all provided without reference to citizenship status of, say, a business owner or an employee?
So, I feel like there are a couple of questions there. We don't ask, so if you're a worker who's employed at a business, right, we don't ask you for your immigration status. Like in this country, if you worked in a workplace, you have a right to all the rights in the workplace, just as any person who has a green card or is a citizen, right? To the extent of whether someone who's applying for a license may have to show that they have a social security number and other requirements, so they will have to show identification. I can't tell you 100% what it is that they have to show. I think I would rather not give you bad information, and so you can, we'll follow up with you if you're interested in hearing that particular detail.
Okay. Any final questions, folks? We're all good? Okay, we're at the end of our times, and I would like to thank you. Please join me in thanking Commissioner Salas for spending an entire hour with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. So here's what we're going to do. I know these folks well enough